All right. Hello, everyone. Gary Ryan here with another Fed League Flash. Today, Sunday, we are looking at the history and the future of the Carolina Thunderbirds. And this is going to be the last one I do in this series of kind of looking at some of the older teams in the Fed. But I thought this was a good place to leave off because Carolina really kind of symbolized a hinge in Fed history, opening up the South. Um, really, Carolina, as far as its impact on the league, is one of the most important franchises to the FPHL. Now, taking a quick look back, much like some of the other cities in the FPHL, when the league looked to expand, they found Winston-Salem was rich in hockey history, has a pro hockey history dating back to 1973. So it hasn't been consecutive since then, but a lot of previous teams in the city of Winston-Salem, starting off playing at the old Coliseum, old building that sat like 7,600, but they couldn't fill the building. And then 1989, when the Fairgrounds Annex Arena was built, uh, it's listed at 3,150, but I know there's been many times this last couple of years that 3,200 plus have been squeezed into the building with standing room and whatnot. Um, so yeah, now the building's getting filled and then some. But anyway, so Barry Soskin and his group, he had a group of owners, um, proposed expansion to a southern team, and yes, Soskin saw that there's a very good hockey history in Winston-Salem, so he thought, hey, this makes it an ideal market. Starting back in 1973, the first team to call Winston-Salem home was the Polar Twins. They played in the old Southern Hockey League. Now, the Southern Hockey League, along with the original NAHL, there were two leagues that splintered off from the old Eastern Hockey League. And both of those two leagues, the Southern Hockey League and the NAHL, would feed players to both the WHA and the NHL back in the day. Quality of play wasn't great for the league, but nonetheless. So yeah, the Polar Twins were the first team. They were there for the existence of the Southern Hockey League, which folded mid-season in 1977. Had a couple of years off, and then the ACHL, Atlantic Coast Hockey League, came, and there was the original iteration of the Winston-Salem Thunderbirds. And this was a powerhouse team in a league that lasted for 6 seasons. Uh, the Thunderbirds won 3 finals within a 4-year period, and they were the losing finalist in the 4th year. So, yeah, they were quite a team. Then, when the ACHL folded, it became the All-American Hockey League. And this was a very short-lived league, but this was kind of a forerunner league to the FPHL. The AAHL splintered off from the Continental Hockey League. Continental, sound familiar? Yep, there's a reason why the division is named the Continental Division. Yeah, there were teams from Danville and Dayton, Ohio, also in the league, and Barry Soskin was very active in that league back in the time. All right, so then 1988, the AAHL is not doing great financially, and a new league forms called the East Coast Hockey League. And so the Thunderbirds become the first of, one of the first teams for the ECHL in its premier year. It was a 5-team league, and the Thunderbirds won what is now the Kelly Cup. So yeah, there you go. There's a little bit of hockey history for you, a little bit of trivia for you. You know, who won the first ECHL championship? The Carolina Thunderbirds. All right. After 4 years, operating expenses were kind of difficult, and so the team got moved to Wheeling, now known as the Wheeling Nailers. So the original Thunderbirds franchise technically is still in existence in the ECHL. Interesting, huh? All right. There were a number of teams and leagues that didn't last through the years. There was the Mammoths and another Southern Hockey League. There were the Ice Hawks in the United Hockey League, lasted a couple of years, moved to Adirondack. There was another Atlantic Coast Hockey League with the Parrots. Um, and then we had the final iteration of the Winston-Salem Thunderbirds, technically known as the T-Birds, in a league called the Southeast Hockey League, which would become one of the leagues that would formulate the SPHL. So yeah, first year of the SPHL, the team, they changed its names. It was the Winston-Salem Polar Twins. Only lasted the 1 year, but then after a couple of years, the SPHL came back to Winston-Salem, and the Twin Cities Cyclones played a couple of years. And then there was a bit of a break for a while. This took us up to 2009, excuse me. In 2011, there was supposed to be another league called the Northern Professional Hockey League, never developed. The league never played. But you know, there were still people that wanted hockey in the Winston-Salem area. So finally, in 2014, in March, much like what Barry Soskin has done in other cities like Mississippi and Baton Rouge, he said, let's play a trial game, a neutral site game at Winston-Salem, see how it goes. So Danville Dashers and Watertown Wolves met for a game on March 1st, 2014, and 2,400 fans showed up. Very encouraging. So, yeah, after some thought for a while, the FPHL said, you know what? We think this southern market thing is a really good idea. It's gonna grow. And they called it right. So on August 19th, 2016, the FPHL, then the FHL, announces they're expanding to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So the league had just lost the Berlin River Drivers and the Danbury Titans due to financial issues. So this was a perfect time to open up a new market that would, in turn, open up other markets. Kind of like opening a Walmart. You know, you open a Walmart and a whole bunch of other little businesses pop up around it. Well, Winston-Salem kind of had that effect on opening up the South for the FPHL. So we get to the 2017-18 inaugural season, and the team does pretty well, draws over 2,200 fans. Andre Nitsch is the first coach of the Thunderbirds after a very good career throughout Europe. Also played a couple of years in the FPHL. And so the team goes 30-24-2, which is third place. That's not too bad. They went to the playoffs, faced the Watertown Wolves. Tough OT losses in both games. Lost 2-0 to Watertown, both in overtime. So it set a good tone for the future of the league. Some notables on that first team, that first-year team. Josh Petrantonio, who had played with Andre Nitsch up in Berlin, he was the leader and leading scorer for the team. Also, you saw the arrival of Yuri Pastuka and Jan Salak. And yeah, they've been around a long time. Also, Christian Pavlas in goal, as well as Chris Paulin, who's now, of course, an assistant coach in Port Huron. So, yeah, good foundation built. So next year, the team just goes crazy, sets a league record with a record of 49, 6, and 3. Good for 149 points, a winning percentage of 856. That topped several records that were set just 2 years earlier by the Port Huron Prowlers. This was a phenomenal team. Not only did you have Pastuca and Salak and Petrantonio, but you had Peter Panchek coming in, you had Jay Krupp, Victor Grebennikov came in, Frankie McClendon was in goal, Everett Thompson, head coach of Baton Rouge, he played on that team. So yeah, team was amazing, incredible. Christian Pavlos, 1.77 goals against average for that year, won 30 games. Incredible, incredible season. So the team goes to the playoffs. They beat Port Huron easily, 2-0. And then they faced off against the new Elmira Enforcers, who had a dynamic season themselves, but it was no contest. Carolina wins 3-1 and wins a championship in just their second year. All right, so we go to the 2019-2020 season. And hopes are high for a repeat because a lot of players have come back. And they've added some other amazing talent as well, like Dan Klinecki, John Butita, his first season with the Thunderbirds, Daniel Martin, Austin Rodebush in goal. This tremendous, tremendous team. And the team's doing really well, 35, 6, and 5, which at that time was first in the 5-team Western Division. 108 points. Last game they played against Columbus, they win 9-3, and then COVID shut everything down. And unfortunately, a lot of players dispersed from the team after that year. 28-31 was the attendance per game that year. Fantastic, fantastic turnout. Which, why not? I mean, hey, you got a great product on the ice. Following season was the Ignite Cup Challenge, as I call it. Carolina was one of the 4 teams that participated. Unfortunately, only 2 teams got to play for the Cup, and Carolina wasn't one of them. They just went 10-9-1, finishing 3rd out of 4. But the following year, the league is back to a 7-team league, and Carolina kind of regroups. They perform well, 31, 26, and 5. No losing record. They've never had a losing record. This was the first year of head coach Garrett Rutledge being in place. So the team finishes in 5th, 2 points behind Binghamton. And in the first round of the playoffs, they beat Port Huron. Common theme. 2-0, but then they lost to Watertown, who, of course, ended up winning the Cup 2-0. So, joining the team that year, Gus Ford, first year. Dawson Baker, his first year. Jacob Schnapp. Yeah, you know those guys. All right, so we get to the 2022-23 season. Now the team is drawing 28.78 per game in an arena that, again, online it says 3150 is the capacity. Call it 3200. The place is rocking, and the team is rocking. Team gets off to a bit of a slow start, but then catches fire, ends up overtaking Columbus, who at one point Columbus was 25 points ahead of Carolina, but Carolina kept clawing back, ends up winning the division on the final day by beating Columbus. So they end up with a 40-12-4 record, 117 points. That's first in the Continental. So into the playoffs they go. It's a thing. Let's beat Port Huron 2-0. All right, done. So they then take on their rivals, the Columbus River Dragons, win 2-1. A hard-fought series. So they earn the right to go to the finals against the Danbury Hat-Tricks. probably the best finals that has ever taken place in the history of the Fed in the 15 years. Um, Carolina dominates both games at home. They win 6-2 and 5-1. So Danbury's on the ropes. Next three games were in Danbury. Of course, we know how it turned out. Danbury ended up chipping back, won the third game big, won the fourth game with the clock game, but it, there was 5.2 seconds on the clock from the face-off to the time that the puck went in the net was 6.1 seconds. So the correct call was made. Nonetheless, set up an important game five. The game goes to overtime, and in overtime they lose on just a puck that just happened to squeak by. Um, mere inches, but Danbury ends up winning the championship. But a successful season. The end of the year, Garrett Rutledge announced that he's going to the OHL. And, oh, yeah, forgot to mention a couple of additions to that team, Joseph Kennedy and Mario Cavalier. So then we end up looking at last year. Again, 40, 12, and 4. Now, Columbus had an amazing, amazing season, almost set the record for points percentage, just fell short. But Carolina was a close second to Columbus. And again, seemingly playing very well. This time around, they've added Clay and Nate Keeley. They've added Roman Kramer. They've halfway through the year, they added Cody Karpinski. Ended up giving them some really valuable wins. Steve Harrison is the coach. Of course, Harrison had won a cup himself, a Commissioner's Cup with Danville a few years earlier. So, 116 points, second in the Continental, but they would go into the playoffs. And this was an interesting playoffs. All three rounds, Carolina lost the first game. They lost to Port Huron, in Port Huron, come to Carolina. Tough game. Win in double overtime in the third and deciding game to win that series. That earns them the right to take on the Columbus River Dragons. And guess what? Yep, after Columbus wins the first game, Carolina takes the remaining two and wins 2-1 to earn their second straight trip to the finals. This year, they're playing the Binghamton Black Bears, and they just seem to be one small step behind. All the games were close, 5-3, 4-3, 4-3, but Binghamton wins in the sweep. And so now, we end up in this current off season, and the team's kind of looking like, well, what do we need to do to cross that final step, to get over the final hurdle? It's obviously, the team played very, very well last year. They just came up just a little bit short. But as we look ahead to this next season, the 24-25 season, prospects are very good once again. And, Boots is back for one more season as team captain. This will be his last year. But it's good to have him back. Of course, we expect the Czechs to be back. We expect probably Gus Ford will come back. Plus, we have some additions. We have Sam Best, new goaltender, backing up Cavalieri, and out of UMass Boston. He's looking like he's going to be a keeper. And you got some real good people on defense, like James Farner-Vellante. You already had him last year. But now you also have Lane King obtained in a trade. You have Jacob Schnapp being back. You have the Czechs. You have Gordon Whalen looking to play a full season at defense. The defense is kind of revamped. Justin Biani got lost. Josh Keplinger got lost in the expansion draft. But I think they're going to be okay. Offense is not the problem with the Thunderbirds. It just seemed like they just kind of would get bogged down in their own end at times. But again, this is one of the better teams in the league. They'll obviously be a serious contender for the cup again this year in the Continental Division. I think it's between them and Columbus once again. I really do. But yeah, again, the impact though that Carolina has had on the league, tremendous, opening up the entire South. The whole Continental Division has the Carolina Thunderbirds to thank for their existence. Columbus comes in the year after Carolina came in. In 2022, you had the Mississippi Seawolves come in. Last year, you had Baton Rouge and Blue Ridge come in. Now you've also added Monroe and Athens. And it's all because Carolina was just able to open that door, let the flood waters come pouring into down to the south. And probably the best thing that the FPHL ever did was putting a team in Winston-Salem. So there we go. There's a look back and forward at the Thunderbirds. Let me know what you think about their prospects for this upcoming year. Leave a comment down below. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Have a great rest of the weekend.